What's good, YouTube? Welcome back. Thank you for clicking onto this reaction. I hope you're looking forward to it just as much as I am. If you haven't already, head over to the content creators page. That link is in the description box down below. If you haven't already and you're enjoying our content, you know what you need to do. You need to like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell, but we're going to jump straight into this one. Worst Crusade. Crusade of 1101. Let's go.
In our previous episode on the First Crusade, a surprise attack at the Battle of Ascalon sealed the victory at Jerusalem and secured the city. With their pilgrimage complete, some returned home to deliver the news, while most of the Franks remained in the Holy Land. The biggest victory in the entire history of the Crusades was about to be followed up by one of its biggest disasters.
Oh really? Why is that?
Sounds like they'd better celebrate. Over the course of this long series, we went over many misconceptions, but today we will tackle the biggest one of them all. For many past and present historians, the Battle of Ascalon was the perfect place to end this chapter. The crusade was a miraculous success, Jerusalem was taken, and some of the chroniclers went home. This simplistic notion, somewhat cultivated by the historians of old and new, ignores that not a single one of the main characters was brought to the conclusion of their story. Raymond was scorned for being overlooked as a new monarch. Alexios was yet to react to the capture of Jerusalem and expected the promises given to him by the Crusaders to be fulfilled. And Godfrey, who was just crowned, had not proved himself as a ruler yet. Bohemond
This actually makes sense, yeah. All of this information is just left out completely.
Squabbling with everyone around him continued. The Fatimid leadership hadn't lost its resolve, and the Seljuk Sultan of Rum, Kilij Arslan, still lurked in the Anatolian mountains. But arguably, the biggest oversight of so many historians had to do with the response of the West and the fate of the expedition we now call the Crusade of 1101, which is why it is an often forgotten chapter of the Crusades. Following the return of many Crusaders who spread their adventure stories, many more now wanted to make their pilgrimage to the Holy Lands. The Archbishop
Oh god, I see what's going to happen already. Of course.
Bishop of Pisa,
like
Dagobert, was particularly eager as he saw the opportunity for his republic to expand its influence to the east, a move already made by Venice and Genoa. After being appointed legate by the new Pope Paschal II, he set out with a fleet of 120 ships in the autumn of 1099, stopping and plundering the Byzantine islands of Corfu and Kefalonia along the way. Alexios rolled his eyes once more as he had to deal with plundering Westerners and mustered his fleet. After a few skirmishes, the Pisans decided not to pick a big fight with the Byzantines and sailed east, eventually landing in Antioch.
Yeah, it just wasn't worth going up against the Byzantine Empire at that point in
gained
time.
the support of Bohemond and then finally arrived in Jerusalem a few days before Christmas in 1099. Almost immediately, the Archbishop was accepted by most of the Crusaders as the new Patriarch of Jerusalem, replacing Arnulf of Schock. This strong connection to Pisa meant that the Crusaders now had a direct line of communication and supply with the West, and no longer had to rely on Byzantine shipments.
Ooh, they're really cutting the Byzantine Empire out here, aren't they?
It was in the year 1100 that the new Outremer states, meaning the states beyond the sea, as they were actually called at the time, would be set on a completely different path. In May, Raymond abandoned the Levant and sailed to Constantinople, where he asked Emperor Alexios for aid to carve out a state of his own in Tripoli.
I mean, are you really gonna ask Alexios for aid when things just keep going wrong? And like Light says, just these Crusaders keep attacking the Byzantine Roman Empire, and it is just getting frustrated at this point. But also at the same time, those Crusaders attacked anyone and everyone they could, because they got that ticket to heaven.
After an Armenian soldier of fortune, Gabriel, captured the city of Melitene from the Turkic Danishmendids, Bohemond also received a request for aid from him. Using the overall chaos, Alexios began to slowly put on pressure, asking the Norman to fulfill his oath and relinquish Antioch, and this would be the moment when the two came to blows. As Beaumont was...
Of course, Beaumont was never going to give it up, and Alexios wanted it. So how does this play out?
Budging, Alexios acted swiftly, sending his fleet to capture two critical Cilician ports, Seleucia and Kyrikos, off the coast of Cyprus. In response, Beaumont replaced the Greek patriarch of the city with a Latin one, and what had so far been a cold war quickly turned hot. Beaumont needed to expand his base, and so he decided to fulfill his oath to help Melitene. He took his army and made his way toward the city, hoping to eliminate the Danish Mendids. Unfortunately for him, however, his luck had run out. The steppe riders, who had a profound knowledge of the terrain and which passes to occupy, lured him into a trap and captured him at the Battle of Melitene. His followers were killed and he was moved to Neo Caesarea. Alexios offered to pay 260,000 gold pieces to get his enemy into custody, well over the 100,000 they initially asked for. But the Danish Mendids refused, as
they're still refusing it.
Preferred Crusaders to the Byzantines as their neighbours. In his absence, Tancred took charge of Antioch and was busy defending the city from a series of opportunists.
So peak for
Alexios surrounded the city on either side by taking hold of Cilicia and capturing Latakia in the south.
Yeah, that's going to be an issue. You're now surrounded. What are you going to do?
While the Eastern Romans were squeezing Antioch, Godfrey was busy expanding the Kingdom of Jerusalem to the south, making Acca, Jaffa, Ascalon, Asaph and Caesarea tributaries. But then he suddenly fell ill. After fighting off the sickness for a month and a half, he finally succumbed on July 18th, ending his almost 1-year reign. This nearly caused a civil war, as his supporters rushed to secure every tower in Jerusalem before the Pisan Patriarch could fulfill his dream of annexing the city for the papal state. Instead, the crown passed to his brother, the ruler of Edessa, Baldwin, who, in the words of his chronicler, grieved somewhat over the death of his brother, but rejoiced more over his inheritance.
I mean, you bowed out a while ago. Do you know what I mean? And you're just getting Jerusalem. You're getting all the victories.
Baldwin of Libourg was selected as the successor of the county of Edessa. On the journey from Edessa to Jerusalem, Baldwin refused the pleas of the citizens of Antioch, who wanted him to take over the city, which he refused to do. As he made his way south, he was warned by the Emir of Tripoli that Dakak of Damascus prepared an ambush for him. With this crucial piece of intel, Baldwin located his enemy and vanquished him. He then chased Dakak to Damascus and demanded that the city surrender, but its doors remained.
Oh wow, really? That ambush didn't work at all.
Shut. After arriving in Jerusalem on November 9th, he showcased his capabilities by raiding the environs of Ascalon and launched an expedition into the nearby caves, slaughtering a group of bandits hiding there. Dagobert of Pisa was forced to accept defeat and crowned him King of Jerusalem on Christmas. The nearby towns made sure to send the new king precious gifts
literally inherited Jerusalem. Holy shit, Baldwin. Holy shit.
in order to ensure his goodwill. Back in the west, the immense efforts to rally a new group of crusaders started to produce results. The Pope purposefully targeted regions that didn't send large contingents previously, which led to a multicultural and very diverse selection of warriors ready to join the fray.
So do you think they asked those other regions because they knew the regions that they had already asked wouldn't be able to provide enough men? That's the only conclusion that I come with, and I just want to know if you guys think that, if you guys have a different opinion that might sort of change my thought process. But yeah, is that the reason why he asked the smaller states? Is because they're going to have the population to fill the army?
Much like the original members, these were separate groups who made their way to Constantinople on their own. They spoke different languages and had different customs and currencies, but shared a common goal. Surprisingly, that was not the liberation of the Holy Land, which had already been done for the most part. Instead, many set out on the long journey to free their hero Burmore from captivity. Others wanted to repair their reputation, among them those who had abandoned the crusade during the siege of Antioch, as well as the Prince of France Hugh and Count of Blois Stefan. The largest contingent, however, was from an entirely new region, Lombardy, led by the Archbishop of Milan, Anselm, who Pope Pascal II personally selected to lead the crusade. As he made his way through the highly populated Italian region, crowds greeted him, chanting Ultrea, Ultrea, a common pilgrim salute, roughly translating to "Have a good journey." He was joined by Milo of Montlhéry, Guy II of Rochefort, Albert of Biandrate, Albert of Parma, and the bishops of Pavia, Piacenza, and Tortona. While the contemporary
3 bishops this time
figure of 50,000 men is vastly exaggerated, this force was at least 10,000 strong and filled with powerful knights. In late
Okay, so it's nothing like the peasants. This one has knights. There's around about 10,000 men strong, but obviously not all of them are knights. Very interesting. Okay, so what happens here?
Spring of 1101, the Lombards peacefully made their way through Carinthia, Bulgaria, and reached the lands of Alexios, who gave them access to his markets and supplies. While some sources report that order...
Okay, so these crusaders didn't attack the Eastern Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire. They were actually, they went through, they got to Alexios, there was no issues. Okay.
Was quickly restored thanks to the quick response of Anselm. Others paint a far more dire situation, where the insurgents broke into the Blackenay Palace and killed Alexios' pet lion. One way or another, the pilgrims were ferried over the Bosphorus and led to the chosen rallying point of Nicomedia.
What do you think happened? Do you think the incident happened where the pet lion got killed, or do you think that's all crap and all bullshit?
There they met a character we are all too familiar with, Raymond of Toulouse. The Count failed to secure a piece of the Levant for himself, so he fled to the Byzantine camp with the few men he had left and offered his services to the Emperor, as his interests now firmly aligned with those of Alexios, who also considered Burmore an enemy. The old Frank had already made the journey through Anatolia once, so he was to act as a guide. To his dismay, the majority of the Lombards were more interested in freeing Burmore than joining the rest of the Crusaders, and refused the carefully planned route in favour of a more direct approach to Neo-Caesarea, one that took them through the heart of Kilij Arslan's territory.
What fools! What fools! But it shows you they didn't go there for the right reasons, so they're gonna make this stupid mistake. Absolutely stupid.
While the men argued over their route and priorities, the second contingent arrived, led by Stefan of Blois, who was accompanied by Duke of Burgundy Odo, Count of Burgundy Stefan, and Jocelyn of Courtenay. Many of the Franks, such as the Viscount of Bourges, Arpin, sold all of their possessions in order to be sufficiently provisioned with equipment, horses, fodder and coin, betting everything they had on this mission.
Wow.
Once again, we are uncertain about the exact number, but in all likelihood it was around 10,000.
Okay.
Smaller groups from all over Europe arrived in Nicomedia, including the Constable of the Holy Roman Empire Conrad, leading a large German contingent. Overall, the army consisted of around 25,000 fighters, including a Pecheneg elite force led by Raymond.
Is that
Spirits
additional,
were high,
or is that
and with
total?
each new recruit, the voices shouting for Bourmont's rescue
It's
were
25
getting louder.
Yeah, 25
On June 3rd,
is a good total
1101,
number.
Raymond finally relented.
Pet lion sounds absolutely
By late
fine
June,
these days.
the army
I
arrived
don't
at
know what you're talking
Ankara,
about.
which was quickly captured from the Seljuks and returned to Alexios. Without even noticing it, the giant and sluggish host was shadowed by small groups of Seljuks, following their every move, as years after his defeat, Kilij Arslan saw his opportunity for revenge.
And once again, what do you expect? You're a large force in enemy territory, and they're now, at this point, they're now used to you. They now understand your fighting tactics, so they're going to have knowledge that they didn't have before.
The Sultan was busy
and
ever
you
since
don't
his
have
defeat
the,
at Doralea,
and you don't have the knowledge about them because your men aren't experienced. So what do you expect's going to happen?
creating a coalition with the singular purpose of repelling any future Latin incursions. He knew the land well, and was well aware not to underestimate his opponents again.
Once again, like I said, not going to underestimate his opponents, and he's also making that pact to basically say we can't let the Latins here again, which once again is understandable. When the effect and the repercussions of the first one was so bad, you would never want that to happen again to you.
Wells and cisterns were destroyed. Towns ahead of the Crusaders were emptied. Night raids were launched at the back of the columns. Foraging parties were harassed. But beyond that, there was no attempt at a pitched battle.
Okay.
The Westerners
just basically making sure that they're going to get fatigued, starve them out, and make them also die first. Just have drought, everything.
now made their
Push them
way
to the
towards
brink.
the safety of the Black Sea, bringing them to the territory of the Danishmends, who, alongside Ridwan of Aleppo, were part of Kilij Arslan's alliance. By August, their supplies were exhausted, and the heat had sapped their strength and morale. As the Crusaders approached Mercivan, they were organized into 5 divisions. The Lombards in the vanguard, followed by Remor, his Pecheneg riders, and the Burgundians, the Germans behind them, and lastly the French. The horses were weak.
Lastly, the French. Interesting. I think Jack would have found that funny for sure.
The equipment heavy, and the army size made them slow down to a crawl, with communication between the different contingents extremely difficult due to distance and language barriers. Meanwhile, the nomadic warriors worked as one in the land they had known since their childhood. On the first day of this drawn-out engagement, Kilij Arslan cut off the separate armies and surrounded them after a feigned retreat maneuver. On the next day, Conrad led the German force in a failed raid that cost many lives. Unable to return.
Oh no, you broke the line and now you're not going to be able to return. What a pleb. What an absolute
German force in a
pleb.
failed raid that cost many lives. Unable to return to the main host, the survivors took refuge in a nearby stronghold, while the rest began to fear that Conrad betrayed them. The third day was uneventful, but added.
What do you mean they felt like he betrayed them? I guess he hasn't run off yet, right? He's still there. What do you guys think?
To the
Or is he
pressure
stuck
and
there?
anxiety, which was drowning the Crusader camp by this point. On the fourth day, the Crusaders attempted to break out of the encirclement, inflicting heavy losses on their Seljuk enemies at a high cost. But then, on the next day, Kilij Arslan was joined by Ridwan of Aleppo and more Danishmendid princes.
Oh, that's it. That's
The
it.
Lombard vanguard was decimated, sending the Pechenegs in full retreat. Before long, the French and German contingents broke.
Is this where Raymond dies? I think this might be where Raymond dies.
All cohesion and began fleeing. Remor fell and was left trapped, but Conrad and Stefan helped him, and together they made their way toward the coast. The camp was captured, where the nomads found many priests, women and children that they enslaved. Those who didn't possess horses, particularly the Lombards, didn't manage to go very far, as they were hunted down like wild game by the Seljuks. Remor, Stefan of Blois, and Stefan of Burgundy fled to Sinope and sailed back to Constantinople. Anselm and Odo both died from the injuries of this battle, and the Holy Lance found in Antioch was now in the hands of Kilij Arslan.
We know it's a fake one, but still.
One army was ambushed and annihilated, another formed back in Constantinople as more groups arrived. William, Duke of Aquitaine, Welf, Duke of Bavaria, William, Count of Nevers, and lastly the French Prince Hugh of Vermandois assembled, were given gifts, and swore oaths to Alexios. Together they had over 30,000 troops. The Count of Nevers was in no mood for waiting for the second group to ride out together, knowing there were others on their way to glory, so his contingent left Nicomedia and headed towards
What's going to
Burmah.
happen with this new group?
He came very close to the First Army on numerous occasions, but never caught up to them. At one point, he managed to lay siege to the Seljuk capital, Iconium, in mid-August, while the Sultan was distracted, but to no avail. Soon after he gathered the spoils from Mercivan, Kilij Arslan made his way against this new threat, and ambushed William at Heraclea Kabistra. The Seljuks anticipated the move towards the Cilician gates, and positioned themselves in the right place at the right time. Previously,
once again, the Seljuk Turks just being able to flank and just put pressure onto the Crusaders with these outflanks.
We saw how a force of 10,000 Crusaders won multiple battles and took several heavily fortified cities. But here at the plateau of Anatolia, this force would become little more than a footnote in history. Only Count William and a few dozen knights managed to survive and reach Antioch.
Only a few dozen. And wasn't it 10,000 they started with? No, 30,000 they started with. Wait, was it 30,000 they started with? And only a dozen survived? You're so lucky you got out, my man. You're so lucky you got out, my man. Oh my god.
Unfortunately, the details of the battle are lost, possibly due to the lack of European survivors.
Yeah, they didn't want to talk about that.
Lastly, there was the third group led by William of Aquitaine, Welf of Bavaria, Hugh of Vermandois, Hugh of Lusignan, and the first woman to lead an army on a crusade, the Margravine of Austria, Ida.
Okay.
Together, they made their journey across Anatolia, oblivious to the fate of the other two forces. Thanks to the advice of Hugh, this army did follow.
Oh wait, so the other group was two forces, right? But still, that was 30,000 people. I can't believe these people are about to fall for the same trick.
Follow the Byzantine plan to reach Antioch, but regardless, it was still midsummer, and the same problems that plagued the rest of the Crusaders stalled their progress. Seljuk skirmishes and supply issues broke their morale as they were guided towards Heraclea like lambs to the slaughter. Once on the horizon, the city looked like a breath of fresh air, a place where they could restock and drink fresh water. But as
imagine thinking, oh yeah, we've just put in all this fucking work. Finally, we can just chill, have a drink, maybe have a decent night's sleep, and then deal with whatever we got to the next day. Thinking you're at the end of this first part of your journey, and boom.
They neared, they saw the destroyed cisterns and dead bodies of the previous group.
You see that?
There was not much of a battle to speak of. The Crusaders were exhausted, dehydrated, demoralized, and not suited for the warfare the Seljuks had perfected. Many, including Hugh and Welf, died, while others, including Ida, were captured. According to a later false legend, she then became a part of a harem and became the mother of Zengi, the future founder of the Zengid dynasty.
That's interesting. Obviously, we don't know if that's true, like they said. Crazy that you fell for it twice. What do you expect? What do you expect?
While that claim was completely false, we cannot ignore the impact these expeditions had on the minds of the Western world. When they set out to the east, the Lombards were discussing plans on how to march on Baghdad, but in the end, this calamity reshaped the borders and mentality of the Christian world. In terms of numbers, the Crusade of 1101 is amongst the largest Crusader forces ever assembled, behind the First and Third Crusade. One can only imagine how big of an impact all these knights would have had on the depleted Crusader states, who were in dire need of reinforcements. Bavaria, Nevers, Lombardy and Aquitaine could have built entire lines of their proud Crusader lineage and continued to be active contributors to the cause. But within a single year, Kilij Arslan turned the tables.
That's it, yeah.
However, this failure didn't dissuade all future Crusaders. In fact, the colossal failure of these expeditions only reaffirmed the legendary status of Godfrey, Baldwin and Bohemond. It also highlighted the dangers of Anatolia and incentivized the sea route, an incentive the merchant republics of Italy were more than happy to facilitate.
Wow, yeah, it was easier to go through Italy this way. I'm definitely interested to see this about the Third Crusade as well, because I'm so surprised this was ranked behind both of those for the amount of people that were involved.
The Crusader states themselves were never actually called that. Instead, they were referred to as Outremer, meaning land beyond the sea in French. But if this expedition, which was clearly tied to the First Crusade, had such a profound impact on the world, why was it ignored by Western historians for centuries? Hopefully by now you will realize that this was a choice made for convenience, as well as an attempt to simplify the incredible story of the First Crusade. Not to mention that going...
So it did stop and deter people doing it for a while then, I assume. This going so badly.
Going forward, historians would continue to make the same mistake of numbering some crusades, even if they had a smaller impact, like the 8th and 9th, while other very important crusades, such as the Venetian and Barons, are not among the numbered ones.
So interesting. I'm so interested to find out about how many crusades there actually were. I don't know how many crusades there actually were. I don't know how they went. And that's so interesting to me that so many of them are left out. Why do people leave so much of this information out?
Again, Hugh died in battle, Burmore was captured, Tancred was at war with Alexios, and Baldwin had to prove himself as the king of a realm with barely any crusaders left. Could the Crusaders pull off another miracle? Or is this the lackluster ending historians tried to erase by picking Ascalon as the conclusion of the Crusade? The reality is that while it is impossible to say when the Crusade began or ended, we can certainly say that 1118 was the year when the story of each of these characters would conclude one way or another. We have 2 more episodes left in this story, so make sure to subscribe and press the bell button to see them.
I am definitely looking forward to finding out what the next 2 episodes are of this series. Definitely. Very interesting. So glad that we got a couple more episodes in this series as well. So, like, the last episode was a month ago, so it probably should be dropping soon, right? Yeah, should be dropping pretty soon.